Hello and welcome to another MathCat session where we're going to talk about some grade 10 math. We're using IXL to generate some questions for us to help our discussion. Feel free to explore that website further, use another platform if you're more comfortable, or your own textbook, whatever you need. But we do have to practice these questions more than what we're doing in the video. We're going to go talk about some rational expressions, rational equations in this case. So, of course, that does rely on the foundational things that you can look at other videos in the playlist or request the video. If this is a little bit too advanced and you're not quite ready, just go back a step. So we want to know just basic equations, right? We want to be comfortable with basic equation solving, quadratic equation, potentially in some of these, multiplying polynomials, things like that. We're all building on that. So let's have a look here. So I'm just going to rewrite this to give myself a lot more space. I have my equation here. I'm just going to move this a touch. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm just going to write it the way it is. I'm trying to overthink this layout a little bit to make it as easy as possible for you. So we have some fractions here. That's our main issue, is the fractions. I want to simplify this equation so that I have a version that doesn't have any fractions in it. That's my main complication here. Well, I can multiply, divide, add, subtract, as long as I do it on both sides. Now I'm going to multiply both sides by something that will simplify and avoid the fractions. Well, this first fraction here, is going to need a y plus 5 in the top to cancel with the bottom factor if I group it as 1. But this guy is going to need a y minus 7. So I'm going to multiply throughout by that. And when I multiply it, of course, this is over 1, so it goes into the top. So now I'm going to write it all out because it's our first example. The more we write down, the less we have to keep track of in our head, and it's just easier. So I have the thing I multiplied with throughout, and then this y plus 5 is still in the bottom. And on the other side, I have my negative 3. Then I multiplied those two brackets. And then I have the y minus 7 in the bottom. Let's change some color here just to keep track of this. This is now a common factor on the left, reducing it to just y minus 7. Y minus 7 is a common factor on the right, reducing it to negative 3 times y plus 5. All right, so now I have a version that doesn't have any fractions in it, and that's arguably much easier. I think we can squeeze it in here. Let's see here. I have my y minus 7. Multiply the negative 3 in, negative 3y minus 15. Now at this stage, we should be pretty comfortable with these basic linear equations. So I'll speed this up a little bit, and I am running out of space. Let's go over here. I'm going to move the negative 7 to the right by adding 7, and I'll move the negative 3y to the left by adding 3y. Then I'll get 4y on the left. Negative 7 moves over by adding 7. So negative 15 plus 7 is negative 8. And then I divide both sides by 4. And again, if that seems too big a jump for you, it's not a big deal. It just means you have to go back and practice your equations a little bit more before making them rational, having fractions in there. So y is equal to negative 2. So the key here was really this guy. Call it a common denominator, but that limits me a little bit. I don't necessarily want to think of it in terms of fractions. Where this comes from, I more think of it in terms of what I need to do to both sides in order to get rid of all the fractions throughout the equation. So -2 is what we got here. Let's submit that. Beautiful. And let's do another one. I guess we don't have to rewrite this. We can just look at this equation and think, okay, what do I need to do? Well, I have a denominator here and a denominator there that I'm trying to get rid of. What I'm going to multiply by? Well, the first one needs a g minus 10 to be at the top so that I can get rid of the fraction aspect of this. But the other one needs a g minus 7, and I have to multiply the same thing on both sides. So that is what I'm going to multiply by on both sides. The left side then becomes 10, the whole thing I multiply by, and the original pieces of the fraction on the left are still there. The right side, well, the -5 is still there. The g minus 7 is still there. I put brackets around them to help me remember that this is now one thing that I'll cancel with the top. It's a factor in this fraction. And now the things I multiply by, they go in the top because it's multiplication and it's not a fraction. So now I will switch colors, and this is a common factor that I can cancel in this fraction. This is a common factor that I can cancel in this fraction because I now see it completely as multiplication and division. What am I left with? I'm left with a 10 g minus 7, and I'm left with a -5 g minus 10. That is a much better equation to look at. Linear equation, much easier. You've already practiced that, mastered that. So I'm reducing a more complicated situation to something more familiar, but it's equivalent. So let's multiply the 10 in. 10g minus 70, -5g plus 50. Let's move the variables to the left by adding 5g, and then I get a 15g. Adding 5g, adding 5g. Let's move the numbers to the right by adding 70, and then I get a 120. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 15 to get g equal to, well, maybe you have a calculator. I don't have a calculator here on hand quickly, and I want to practice some basic arithmetic. You have a lot of options here. You can do a straight division, but 15 is not that handy, is it? You have a lot of options, and I just want to show you that you shouldn't think of this like, oh, I have to do this, because that is not that pleasant, or I have to use a calculator. Practice some basic mental arithmetic skills so that you feel competent and empowered. And there's a lot of ways you can go here. One way that I might go if I have to do this quickly in my head is look at the 15 as 3 times 5. And then instead of doing the whole division by 15, I can just, let me just change colors here. I can just look at the convenient one. Maybe 120 divided by 3 is convenient, because that is a 40. And then I still have the 5 in the bottom. And now 40 divided by 5 is a much, much simpler division. And I get my answer of 8. So I try and keep myself reasonably sharp with these small numbers and basic arithmetic Do not rely too heavily on a calculator. Yes, there are times when I'm going to go to the calculator. I just didn't have one. What can I do? Give up? No, I can still do it. You can do the straight division as well, but there's some stuff in between that is arguably a little bit simpler and easier. Anyway, that's a side note. Our answer is 8. Let's put it in. See what we get. Fantastic indeed. So here's, excuse me. Oh, I got all emotional about this. As soon as I saw this one, oh, it's so much worse. What do? I do the exact same thing. I just look at, so I'm going to set this one up for you. Just give you a little bit of a start. I do the exact same thing. I'm going to multiply with something that resolves the fraction problem that I have, the inconvenience. So looking at the left side, I'm going to have a b plus 7 in there so that it cancels with this denominator. But looking at the right side, I'm also going to need a b plus 3 to resolve that fraction. So let's write down what we have here. I have a b plus 4 over my b plus 7. And now I'm multiplying this. Yes, it looks worse before it's going to look better. That's okay. On the right, I have a b plus 2. And I have a b plus 3 in the denominator. And then the things I multiplied by, that goes in the top. Now let's cancel some common factors. B plus 7, B plus 7. That was by design. That's why I chose this. On the right, B plus 3, B plus 3. So let's see what I'm left with. Yes, okay, it's not a linear equation anymore. It's a quadratic equation. But I have the tools by now, before I get to this, to handle that. Simply foiling out the left, foiling out the right, and then putting like terms together, and then go about my business. You should have the tools to do that. I'll do maybe one of them, right? First one's b squared. Outside ones, let's put them together actually. By now you should be able to do the outside and the inside ones together. Outside is 3b. Inside ones are 4b, so that's a 7b. Last one's a 12, and I will leave the rest to you to simplify in your own time. Decide if you need to go back a step, if you're not quite ready for this, or go ahead and let me know what the value or values of b are. And we will see each other next time. Until then.
Welcome to MathCats, where we aim to better understand mathematics. Join us weekly for discussions on elementary, high school, through to university math. You can request the next topic by leaving a comment on our YouTube channel or by emailing us at mathcats314@gmail.com. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.